I'm Scherbaum. This is Love and Division, and we are going to do some book reviews today, and some newspapers. I'm going to do a couple newspapers, but real briefly. I just got a couple brief things to say. It's interesting. I got this from Department of Transportation. Real ID enforcement deadline approaching. So if you cooperate, you get a gold star. You're gonna put a gold star, and you kind of like, I think what they used to do in Germany, right? And, during the war. So there's a local paper, Bucks County Herald. It's a paper they have to give away for free because nobody would pay for it, and it's mostly funded, I guess, by advertisements. But so right on the front here, stop gun violence, exercising their civil rights. There's one of the signs. There's fewer guns equals freedom, and you know what happens? I mean, one of the main things is preventing America from being a complete tyranny is the fact that so many people got guns. I mean, really, look at that. That's one of the more local schools here. Look at the ethnic makeup of this school. That's pretty interesting, and they want to make sure they grow up without guns so that they won't be able to protect themselves. Although, you know, the problem with the Second Amendment is that the purpose was to see to it that the public had as much firepower as the government did, so that they could overthrow a tyrannical government if they needed to. So what's happening now? You see, the government has all the firepower. What we really need to do to realistically exercise the Second Amendment is to diversify the military and what do you call that? Distribute the military, break it up and distribute it to local. So every say municipality has their own Department of Defense. That's really the way it should be done if it's if you're going to actually apply it properly. That there shouldn't be a federal government, and there certainly shouldn't be like a federal military Department of Defense. Should be spread out, and each department, each township, as far as I'm concerned, they could have their own sovereign military. It doesn't have to answer to anybody. That's freedom. Freedom. That's how freedom works. Okay, so here's another one. This is the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm surprised they're still in business. I didn't even know they were still in business. But so here's the front page. Okay, love lessons. This is about giving condoms to children. They have Valentine's Day, lollipops and condoms for kids. And so that's the Marxist culture, Marxism. They want you to it's one of the way of making people adopt a culture that doesn't involve a traditional marriage, because family unit is a competing authority of the government. The government wants to be God now, and so they can't have no false gods before them. And then of course they got this thing. It looks so fake. This looks so fake. Okay, 6 months term for lies to the FBI. See the guy with the gun, right? He's repenting because he was involved in former Navy Yard employee, a torchbearer for white supremacists. He once marched alongside. Sent Thursday to 6 months prison for lying to federal about his ties to extremist groups. It looks so fake. It looks like the guy's probably. It looks like an inside. It's like just a fake news piece. Hey, you want to pose for this because we got. We want you. We'll tell everybody you're getting this. You're going to prison, or whatever, for 6 months. It's interesting, the whole thing about why is it considered supremacist if people say, okay, you know what, if we get together we could do better for ourselves. I mean, the Jews do it all the time, so I don't see the newspaper running something about Jewish supremacists all the time. They have every right to do that. The Jews do, and so does everybody else. But it seems like they're the only ones allowed to do it, you know? Because they own the newspapers, and they control the flow of information and the content thereof. Now, here's our book reviews. World Freemasonry. Unveiled. Veronica Clark. One of her books. It's a translation, though. It's basically what it is. Translated by Veronica Clark. I really like Veronica Clark. She probably doesn't like me, though. She got I think a master's degree in diesel mechanic or something. But she's just a young girl, and she decided to pursue the truth. You know, that is interesting. The Bible condemns people. Says they suppress the truth, and the truth about the New World Order and World War I, World War II, 9/11, all that. Those truths are being suppressed, and the Bible condemns that. You see. So basically, this book is a book that was written by. It's information coming to us from the Germans, the National Socialists, during the National Socialist period. The research that they have done on the Freemasons. And, the Freemasons were not welcome in Germany, but for very good reasons. They, people are supposed to be stupid. That's why, you're obligated to be stupid these days. You're obligated to be uninformed. And anybody that has information is considered evil. So let's see what they have to say here. Okay. But the fact that many lodges are presided over by Jews should be enough evidence that they are under Jewish influence. In the Freemasonic Lodge, Lebanon, Zuden, Dre, Cedron. 18 of the 100 members were Jewish, even though the city of 31,000 there were only about 10 Jewish families. Here are a few of the names of devout Jewish heads of lodges in Italy. The infamous mayor of Rome, Ernesto Nathan, foreign minister Sonino, responsible for Italy's entry into World War. That's World War I. In Austria, the Grand Master, Dr. Karl Ornstein, Deputy Grand Master, Dr. Adolf Kapralik, Speaker, Dr. Emil Franke, Speaker, Dr. Gustav Spieler, Speaker, Dr. Edward Zinner, activist Henrik Glucksmann. In fact, most of the administrators have been Jewish in America. The Vice President Marshall, a high-degree Mason of the Scottish Rite. The President of the American Workers' Union, Samuel Gompers. Morgenthau, the American Treasurer. In Belgium, we have Paul Hymans, the Foreign Minister, and President of the League of Nations in France, President Millerand. His grandfather's name was Cahen. The Revolutionary Minister, President Kurt Eisner, Levine, Nissan, the murderer of hostages, as well as all the members of the Government Council in Munich and Hungary, the mass murderer Bela Kun, etc. Okay. Page 16. The more important a Freemason, the higher the degree. That is, Freemasons have categorized their brethren into different ranks. The degrees are differentiated into John Masonry, Andres Masonry, High Degree Masonry, and purely Jewish Masonry. Okay. And it goes on to explain, what those different things are. Above those degrees are the so-called secret degrees. The names and rankings of those unknown to the upper lower Masons. They are the ones who were engaged in politics, dominating the economy, religion, and all levels of government. They were unknown to everyone, and nobody knew their mission. Freemasonry was clever enough to safeguard these topmost people and was able to control and influence the lodges through them. By acting as apprentices or tradesmen in low-degree lodges, the rest of the brethren, unaware of their high degrees, they were able to assert their influence in proceedings. After the National Socialist Revolution and the confiscation of lodge buildings, a large number of the profane became aware of the rituals of the lower degrees. Many could not believe the Germans would participate in nonsense of this sort, accordingly made fun of it. One should, however, not poke fun at Freemasonic rituals, but consider all of it very seriously. Freemasons achieve two objectives through their rituals. They teach their members to be secretive and to shed the fear of death. They must also be willing to meticulously eliminate traitors or opponents. Okay. All right, let's see what else. Page 19. Okay. All right. In one of the secret degrees, the master is wearing a sash with a double eagle stitched onto it and the words Oro Ab Chao. The final goal of Freemasonry, in plain words, we wish for chaos, the collapse, the revolution, and the confusion of that time. We will create a new order based on the ideas of Freemasonry. And that, they're saying, the World War, for instance. Yeah. Okay. All right. Page 20. Okay. Freemasonry has consequently pursued this final goal, much to our astonishment. We must admire their zeal. The path has always been slippery, filled both with blood and horror. Those killed by Freemasonry number in the millions. No revolution of the last centuries happened without the help of this order. The history of the French Freemasonic Revolution in 1789 is written in blood. The blood of the blonde noblemen who were slaughtered. The 10 million deaths of the last World War were the result of this Jewish world plague. Countless political opponents and noble rulers were murdered. Noble rulers were murdered by them. Innumerable those brothers murdered on their orders. In fact, Freemasonry is so adept in the murder of their own that only rarely is the culprit ever found and punished. Freemasonry, because of its goal to achieve political world dominance, must be considered extremely dangerous for the reason alone. But because they try and realize their goal by wars and revolution, by murder and incitement, it is the duty of state officials to combat them in every way possible. In Germany, Freemasonry initiated the revolt in 1917-18, though through its agents Ebert, Schiedmann, Kurt Eisner, Feshbach, Liebknecht, Rathenow, etc., causing immeasurable suffering. They were also instrumental in combating National Socialism, so whoever claims that German Freemasons were apolitical is either a liar or just dim-witted. Okay, so, it is interesting that, you start these wars and take World War II, for instance. Back then, there was a large German population in America, and they were willing to go, and Christians, by the way, Christians killing other Christians over in Europe too, unknowingly. They were just taking away everybody's freedom and helping these ruling elitists to consolidate power. And I don't think that today you can get Christians to kill other Christians like that. Christians shouldn't be killing anybody for that reason. Of course, there's a different thing if you're actually acting in defense. But these are not defensive wars. It's all bullcrap. It's lies. That Jesus said they were of their father, the devil. He was a liar and a murderer. That's what these wars are. They're based on lies, and then they're result in murders of hundreds of millions of people. And I don't. I mean, how can I put this? There's no way to put this sensitively and unoffensively, but the soldiers of World War I were fools. And, I'm not going to be a fool for anybody like that, and they shouldn't have done it. And General Patton figured this out, but it was too late. It was the end of the war. And you notice how there's all this military worship, and, thank you for your service kind of thing. They're not serving, and they're not serving the people that they're helping the globalist controllers take away our freedoms. Oh, you can't thank them for their service. Okay. Freemasonry is an international menace, especially dangerous for National Socialist Germany because Jewry, Freemasonry are in opposition to National Socialism. We do not fight against individual Freemason, but against the international organization. When we warn most of all about those Freemasons who try to prevent information about Freemasonry from emerging, the fighting National Socialists who tries to enlighten people, whoever endorses the state will welcome this information in the same way a former Marxist who feels betrayed by the old system and is now committed to this new state will welcome clarification about the harmful effects of Marxism. This is great. I love it. The more you learn about National Socialism, the more you realize that they were on the right track. Because, from the original sources. I don't mean learning from, the people that control the information. I mean, you go to the original sources to see why they're being slandered so much. There's a reason, and this is the reason, because they actually did a great job at exposing the evil synagogue of Satan. Okay, page 25. All of the liberal organizations and associations, be they Pan-European Movement, the League for Human Rights, etc., are nothing but Jewish fronts. And even if the rest of the world will not identify them as such, all of these liberal associations are helping the Jews reach their goal. And by the way, when they mention Jews here, even in National Socialism, they're not talking about everybody who's Jewish. They're not against Jews for being Jewish. They're against them for promoting Marxism. That's really what World War II was all about. Was Hitler decided, and I'm going to read that in one of the other books I'm going to be reading soon. You'll see this is from a fly on the wall perspective, listening into what Hitler's advisors used to talk about, and you'll see that it was the whole thing, and there was a lot of Jews working for the National Socialists, and this was really about anti-Marxism, not anti-Jew. And these scientists that got expelled weren't being expelled because they were Jewish. They were being expelled because they were condoning Marxism in one way or another. The biggest secret organization known to the globe, World Freemason Organization, is only part of the Masonic world. The Mosaic worldview. Even though this organization's roots rest in the medieval Wahhoten, its spirit is Jewish. Over time, it became increasingly entrenched in Jewish mythology until it finally became what is an essential and substance of World Freemasonry today, an amalgamation serving Jewish interests, making of Jewish symbols and esotericism from Jewish biblical history and all of the Jewish secret sects. Okay, let's see here. Page 26. Okay, let's go to page 30. All right. If the high-degree Freemason Mullendorf had not been forced to admit to this blood ritual before a court in 1932, nobody would have believed this heinous possible. The words of a bastard high-degree Freemason, Coudenhove Kaleregi, how do you say that? Claregi are fitted here. He stated, the person of the future has to be a crossbreed. I wish for the future race of Pan-Europe to be a Eurasian Negroid mixture, to have a multitude of personalities. And the book writer said, no comment. Kalergi, that's it, Kalergi. The Kalergi plan. Now, so this is, okay, so this is the Kalergi plan that you're always hearing about. The person of the future has to be a crossbreed. I wish for the future race of Pan-Europe to be a Eurasian Negroid mixture and have a multitude of personalities. And I want to weigh in on race and so forth. I actually fall in the category of what could be characterized as the answers in Genesis, a treatment of race, that there's really just one human race, and there's different amounts of pigmentation. Now, having said that, I also believe that there's a lot of different cultures, and that these different cultures and behavior patterns happen to coincide with, almost biological, physical characteristics. There's a correlation. Not that the physical characteristics cause these different approaches to life, but they often go hand in hand. There's exceptions, but there are exceptions. They're not generalizations. In other words, the generalization is there's certain groups of people that do civilization better than others. That's all there is to it. I mean, there's certain groups of people that build the modern world. There's certain groups of people that have done these things. Now, that doesn't mean that anybody else should be totally excluded. It just means that you have to, if you're going to maintain the level of civilization, you have to bring people in very small proportions so that they can learn how to be civilized before you take more of them in. That's basically how you got to do it. It's just a matter of pragmatics. It's not a matter of racism. It's just, how do you do this pragmatically? How do you sustain healthy civilization? Polite society where people aren't, people don't throw trash all over the place and do violence. And if there's a generalization that certain people fit into that violent, it's part of their nature to be violent and so forth, uncivilized, then those people, can only take them in a little bit at a time, so that if they prove that they're not interested in being civilized, you have to expel them. And there's other problems you could have. You could have problems where they want to control everything, and they want to control the flow of information, so that things go in a Marxist direction. Well, you can throw them out too, because that's not civilized either. Okay, and this is the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God. If you read about the kingdom of God in the Bible, on Judgment Day, Jesus is going to be taking people in and casting people out. It's that simple. That's the way it works. There's the kingdom of God is a closed society. I mean, you're invited to come in, but you got to come in through the door, so to speak. You got to come in. There's a certain way to come in. If you're not going to follow the rules, so to speak, you can't come in. That's okay. So let me see here. So it's the Kalergi plan. That's what it is. Okay. I think I read that. Okay, let's go to page 32. If we ignore that this cultish act is in fact a mockery of Christianity. This is one of the rituals. He's talking about one of the rituals that they do in the Freemasonic lodges somewhere. If we ignore this as a mockery of Christianity, we still need to ask what the Freemason understands the fire to be. That is to cleanse nature and renew it as pure. World history provides the answer. World revolution is the fire, the chaos through which the Jews will obtain world dominance. All revolutions, with the exception of the National Socialists and the Fascists, are exclusively the work of Freemasons. And even in places where a revolution started as a result of popular discontent, Freemasons were able to use it for their own gain. They poisoned it with their ideology. The year 1848 is an example. The National Socialist Revolution would also have been perverted by Freemasonry, but they were unsuccessful. Shortly after the revolt, 1943, the French journal published this. A French journal published this: reconciliation between Germany and France is possible only if National Socialism is abandoned, and a radical Freemasonic principle is introduced in its stead, as General Schleicher was ordered to do. What enormous chaos our Fuhrer has prevented from happening. And it's true, that this is the thing. And look, they even, this is interesting. They even on page 33 here, the workshops of the 19th and 30 to the 30th degree of Masons are called Areopagus. These degrees are a struggle against prejudices, as Freemasons understand there's to be a fight against inherent kind and race. Even the teachings about blood and soil are considered prejudicial. Instead of religion, blood, and race and nation, we must have internationalism, cultural and religious anarchy, Bolshevik atheism, pacifism. In short, the dissolution of any organic coalition and instead the creation of national mixture. From this smell of decay, the Almighty Builder, the Jewish God, Yahweh, will distill the air for a new Jewish beginning. This is somebody else's quote. I mean, they're not saying this. This is what somebody else was saying. And, okay, so, yeah, that's exactly what's happening today, in America and in Europe. Who's unleashing these Muslim invasions in Europe? Who's behind that? There's certain Jewish people that admit that they're behind it. I think the woman's name is Barbara Singer, for instance. One of them. Okay, let's see. Page 34. Let's see here. During initiation into the knowledge degree, the candidate has to perform 3 thrusts with his sword against tiara as the representation of spiritual power, against allegiance to the king as representative of governmental order, against the crown of the bourgeoisie as the symbol of nationality. This is education in how to become a citizen of the world, an atheist and a Bolshevist. The one to be elevated to the last level of knowledge is then led onto the rug surrounded by 3 pillars: wisdom, strength, and beauty, where is he ordered to knock the 3 pillars over. At first he hesitates, but when the Grand Chancellor issues the order again, explaining that by doing so a man frees himself from the pomposity of rituals, symbols, and all ceremonial bombast to finally become a real Freemason, he finally obeys the order through chaos to all Jewish world empire. Whoever holds the 30th degree is worthy to be admitted to the highest degree, the Supreme Council. At most, 33 brothers in 33rd degree from the Supreme Council are also called highest council. As mentioned already, according to the decision at the Lausanne Confederation, only one Supreme Council is allowed in each country, with the exception of the U.S. The Supreme Council is, of course, decisive political power in Freemasonry, engaging world politics at the highest level. The 36 Supreme Councils of the world appoint 300 men who control the fate of the entire world, as remarked by Brother Walton Ratnew. Every one of them knows the other, but not one outsider knows even one of the 300. We do not know, however, that it is these shadowy figures who try to undermine every government. Okay. The highest council in Germany was recruited from the Marxist-oriented symbol Grand Lodge. It could hardly be a coincidence that all those higher councils, including Supreme Council, moved to the Promised Land after Hitler came to power. And of course, Hitler was a Zionist, and he wanted them to go to Israel. And even though most of the Freemasonic brothers in this world are not Jewish, it's still the most cunning Jewish organization. Jews know how to capture people to join the secret organization, to use them as unwitting tools in the satanic group, a fact that demonstrates the wretchedness of this coalition. The whole Jewish morals are displayed in it. The inner unsoundness and dishonesty of Freemasonry cannot be portrayed more effectively than by the fact that the lower degrees, the John Lodge's democratic principles, are preached and apparently also practiced, whereas in the Supreme Council authoritarian rule is prevalent. The leaders of Freemason are fully aware of the fact that democracy would lead to destruction of Freemasonry. A more dishonest organization as that of Freemasonry has never existed on Earth. Okay. Conclusion. Am I going to read the conclusion? Let me see. Yes. Okay, following the publication of our series of essays in Der Aufbau, all sorts of people who have a problem with the exposés have tried to portray them as biased or incorrect. Most of them are foreign Freemasons who claim to know better. They were insiders, therefore this is what that, or therefore this or that is wrong. They'll say something like, during the ritual, the tradesman who is about to be elevated to master degree does not wear gloves. He is not wearing a top hat, etc., because that is wrong. Everything is. Dear friends, if small discrepancies like that concern you, you only reveal that you do not understand anything. There is no lodge that performs the rituals exactly like the next. Every lodge has their own deviations, despite sharing the same basics. We are not interested in describing the rituals in a certain lodge, but in demonstrating what all of them have in common. In this, we have succeeded by revealing what is most important to you, dear friends, and which you cannot deny. Try as you might, if you have been a Mason of low degree, you never realized how you were taken advantage of. But if you are one of the higher degree Masons, then you have every reason to be embarrassed by our revelations, and you must now make an effort to undermine our credibility. But if you, dear reader, are interested in finding out more, don't forget that we have in Erlangen, the only Freemason museum in the world, where you can see with your own eyes that every word we wrote is true and every picture original. Then you too will be convinced that it is not a rash or random decision to eliminate Freemasonry in Germany, but a necessity to protect the German people from the influence of an unscrupulous international gang of conspirators. And he's right, and it's a shame that that was a very nice educational museum they had, and I'm sure that the Allies destroyed it. Okay. All right, let's see here. Let's move on to page 38. I did that. Okay, so page 71. There's a lot of pictures and stuff like that. This is the stuff that I guess that was in the museum. Okay, all kinds of pictures of different things. I mean, looks kind of interesting, right? All-seeing eyes. These are the ones that were in. This is the stuff I believe that was in that the aforementioned museum. Okay, let's see here. All right, let's go to 71 here. Oh, here's some more pictures. This is some more of the stuff they have together. There's a skull in front of like an altar, and then there's the big library. They had the Germans. This is the confiscation of the lodge material. The library was also secured. The shelf contains but a small portion of the Erlangen library in which the Talmud, pictured previously, was also found. It was published in French for non-Jewish Freemasons to familiarize them with Jewish principles needed to advance to a higher degree. And yeah, so my understanding, I should read the Talmud. I never did, but um, from what I consider reliable sources, it's there's a lot of evil going on there. Okay, let me see. Both pictures, people make quotes. I mean, there's quotes, that are, extremely violent. Okay, let me see. Here's something. For some reason, I got this page written down. It's both pictures in the special archive. All the names of the Freemasons ever to have belonged to a lodge are collected. This is how competent party officials were able to ascertain who was a Freemason. That's pretty cool. There we are. Excuse me. A little bit cold. Okay, so let me run on to the next book. Now I got to keep my videos a little shorter because when they go on to LBRY, they can only be an hour. And so I'll start on this book, and I might not finish, and I'll do part 2. This is another one that Veronica Clark had a hand in translating. Fred Scherbaum and Veronica Clark did the translation. It's called Werewolves of the Iron Cross, the Hyenas of High Finance. And it says there, the Federal Reserve. Okay. I'll just read a little bit of the back cover here. Soviet communism, international financiers, and Franco-British Freemasonry were interlinked. So how did Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler relate to this network? And how does this topic improve our understanding of today's political and economic crisis? Dr. Henry Buder has answers. He names specific individuals, but his main concern is the ideology that binds this hidden network. For Buder, this ideology infused not only the West, but Soviet Russia. It was characterized by imperialism and duplicity. Communism, capitalism were just 2 subchapters of this overarching spirit, which united many world leaders in a club of which fascists were not a part. The National Socialists who opposed this spirit and presented an alternative were denounced as evil and earmarked for destruction. Why? Okay. And yeah, why wouldn't you allow people to... I thought that was part of the... that's funny, that's part of the United Nations. One of your rights is to self-determination, but that you're really not. That's not what... I thought this was a really nice picture of Adolf Hitler and with the children. And somebody had wrote on there, it's not really in focus. I don't know how to get my camera to come in focus. I don't know where the focus is on that. But anyway, somebody wrote on there that, let me introduce... I'd like you to meet my economic advisor. So, and the point is that Hitler was actually interested in making a world safe for these children. And Hitler wasn't really interested, by the way, he wasn't interested in killing Jews. He was trying to get rid of Marxists. And in this book, we'll find out that there was a number of Jews working with Adolf Hitler who were also not Marxists, And it's just like that today. I mean, even in America today, in the West, the vast majority of Jewish people support cultural Marxism, which is really, it can be characterized as anti-Christian, really, because it's this whole thing, promoting decadent lifestyles, and so and that whole rainbow of ideologies that seek to oppose the God's principles in His creation. Okay, page 29. I'm going to start all the way at page 29. So we're ripping right into this. Okay. Preparata further noted, Hitler had large funds at his disposal, not obtained entirely from German sources. he got money from certain capitalist interests in foreign countries who were attracted by his hostility to Soviet Russia. This is absolutely true, but it does not mean that those foreign sources controlled Hitler. They had common cause against the spread of communism and/or capitalism, according to the research in the polls in who financed Hitler. Thule Society members were literally murdered in the streets in Bavaria, a woman among them. Businessmen were worried about Germany's future, and justly so. Berlin was worried about Bavarian separatism, so Hitler's passion for a unified Germany appealed to the central government and likely was the reason for Berlin's tolerance of the National Socialist Department. In spite of the growing chaos, by the way, I got to look up this one term here. I get this one term because it's going to come up a lot. I forgot to look it up really quick here. Okay. Let me see what this is. Right, let's see here. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see if anybody actually unpacks what it actually stands for. So, okay. It doesn't really. Even Wikipedia doesn't seem to tell you what it actually means. It doesn't. I just won't bother with it. We'll just call it the National Socialist. Let's just do that because it's not even. It's not something that's normally used. I never seen it before until I got this book, and it's just NSDAP. And I don't know what the DAP stands for. I know what NS stands for. National Socialism. It was never clarified in this entire book, so, and I can't find it real quick on the internet. So somebody will put it in the comments if anybody watches this video. I understand that I'm like the most shadow banned YouTube channel, and that the thing is, I'm actually getting more views on LBRY now than I would get when they put it up on YouTube. Okay, so there's more people watching on LBRY on my particular channel than on YouTube. Okay, let's go into the book now. Okay, so Berlin's tolerance of National Socialism in spite of the growing chaos and increasing street violence. The SA's street battles with communists had caught Berlin's attention, while Hitler's speeches, ideas following caught the attention of wide swaths of Germans and international society. Among Hitler's supporters early on were white Russian émigrés, including Schubner Richter, who hoped to forge an anti-Bolshevik alliance with the most promising up-and-coming German party, National Socialist, and allegedly raised vast sums of money per an official 1923 file note. Henry Ford, who was anti-Jewish, he wasn't anti-Jewish, and wished to spread his message to respective nations. I don't know why somebody would say that Henry Ford was anti-Jewish. He wasn't. He was an anti-warmongering, international globalist control freak, top of the pyramid, international bankers who wanted to start wars. Now, if they happen to be Jewish, that's coincidental. It has nothing to do, Anyway, so it shows you now this book, the guy that wrote this book, I mean, he's not particularly a fan of National Socialism, but he's just saying what he knows. And what happens is you come out and you see that even somebody who doesn't like who's being honest, National Socialism is really what's going on today. I mean, in terms of the people that want to be free from the New World Order. Okay. So anyways, let's see. Benito Mussolini, who encouraged Germanic fascism to bolster his own standing at home. The Russian Grand Duchess Victoria, who was pro-monarchy and anti-communist. Sir Henry Dettering, who sought to regain his lost oil interests from the communists. Ernst Röhm, a fervent nationalist who channeled army funds to the NS via front organizations, the Thule Society, which was pan-Germanic nationalist. Joseph Fuss and Hergar, German jewelers. Herr Poschel, a small businessman. Curran Dilstel, an early supporter who gave small funds. Oscar Comer, a toy shop owner. Dr. Frederick Krohn, a dentist. Frau Hoffmann, the widow of a headmaster. Friends of General Ludendorff. Prominent foreigners in Austria, Britain, Czechoslovakia, Finland, France, Italy, Holland, Hungary, Switzerland, Sweden, and America. Free Corps members. Stahlhelm members, right-wing business interests, General Ritter von Epp, who helped Dietrich Eckart and the NSDAP purchase the Volkscher Beobachter, and Dr. Emil Ganser, who had connections to wealthy Protestants. Admiral Schroeder, a former naval commander. A Baron Sabotendorf, who had some connections to J.F. Lehman. Thule member and financier and publisher of German Navy, for the German Navy. And a sympathetic naval officer, Herr Schaffer, who acquired weapons for Hitler's SA, Kurt Ludwig, and two Jewish arms dealers who were either not privy to who Ludwig was or had no reason to fear Hitler. This was 1921 and 1910. Possibly Duke of Anhalt and Count Fugger, Ernst Hans Stengel, and so on. Okay, let's see how much am I going to read the next page. Okay. All right, so he's talking about all the different people that were supporting Hitler in those early days. 32. Let's look at Victor Suvorov for just a minute. One cannot rely on his version of World War II story without additional evidence from other sources to support it. Fortunately, there is some Suvorov's case that Stalin was intent on aggressive attack appears legitimate. In light of recently declassified Russian documents, we now have reason to believe that his plans were aggressive, while Hitler's were defensive. While his policy was forced to accord with the unfolding events like Hitler's, he was more calculating than Hitler ever was. While Stalin was forced to wait on Richard Sorge before he was willing to release his millions of reserves to his Western Front, he was always intent on invasion of Europe at some point. When he thought he might lose the war, he begged for American and British intervention via Europe's soft underbelly, hoping this would divert the bulk of Germany's eastern forces. Thanks to Richard Sorge of Japan, he didn't need that help. As for the Red Army's embarrassing initial setbacks, what first-line conscripts wanted to fight for Stalin and his terrorist commissars. His forces surrendered and deserted by the millions. About 3 million, in fact. So much for the Germans were overwhelmed. Contrary to myth, the Germans did not deliberately starve these Russian POWs. They were logistically unable to handle so many millions at once. All were denounced as traitors by Stalin, who likely feigned surprise at Barbarossa to obtain sympathies from the liberal democracies and fellow communists. Stalin had to appear the victim of unbridled aggression. He did so successfully. There is simply no other explanation for his blatant disregard for intelligence reports indicating that Hitler was planning the attack. All other explanations fail to convince, including that of distrust of his intelligence. He trusted them on everything else, so why not Barbarossa? There's recently declassified evidence that supports this position, as reported by Alan Hall of the Daily Mail Online. This file gives extraordinary glimpse into a country that was deeply divided and not at all as heroic as Stalin made out. Professor Kovalyov who teaches historical jurisprudence, said, they show how local journalists strove under SS supervision to present to their compatriots the Nazis as friends of the Russians. There was even praise in newspapers edited by former communists for Alfred Rosenberg, the chief racial theorist for the Nazis. Of course, these newspapers were all collected and burned or locked away when the tide was turned, and those who wrote the articles were executed. All anti-German bias aside, these formerly secret KGB documents reveal for the first time how thousands of Soviet citizens collaborated with the Germans. It's funny because I go on the internet and I say, if the people who are in charge of the American foreign policy try to start a war with the Russians, I'll fight for the Russians. All anti-German bias aside, the documents prove that countless thousands of Soviet soldiers and citizens alike saw National Socialists as Christian crusaders who came to eliminate their godless Bolshevik rulers. An aspect of Soviet historiography that is either unknown or deliberately omitted by most historians. Hell reported, this view was reinforced when the soldiers of the Third Reich opened up 470 churches in northwestern Russia alone and reinstated priests driven from their pulpits by Stalin. This alliance included tours of Germany, SS-Russian teamwork to root out communist leaders and partisans. The Germans even shipped numerous mayors, journalists, policemen, and teachers back to the Reich to show them the German way of life. Many of the specific details of these relations support the view that Stalin's initial military setbacks were mostly, if not entirely, the combined result of NS military operations other than war. That is psychological, political. Poor morale among the Red Army's civilian conscripts and widespread disillusionment with Stalin and Soviet day-to-day terror. The possibility that troops deployed to defend Stalingrad lacked sufficient training is also reasonable. Wow, put that in your history class. Oh, man. I love it. Yeah. In many instances, the Nazi commanders attempted a hearts and minds campaign. This is the thing they call MOOTW, to win over civilians already oppressed by communist dictates, which included a ban on religious worship. The propaganda war had considerable success, with newspapers and collaborators praising the Germans. We pray to the all-powerful that he gives Adolf Hitler further strength and power for the final victory of the Bolsheviks, ran one article in the newspaper for the homeland. That was printed in Pascal in December 1942. Clandestine tours of Germany were also hugely effective for provincials who had never traveled 10 miles beyond their birthplace, never seen indoor plumbing or central heating. Such trips worked wonders. When they returned to the Soviet Union, said Professor Kovalyov, they were deeply impressed and worked hard to undermine the stiffening Soviet resistance to Nazi armies. Even in January 1943, as the fate of the German Sixth Army was being sealed at Stalingrad, and with it the war, many Russians still enthused about the charms of Nazism. In Borodin, a village mayor from Pskowetsi, wrote that month that Germany is a country of gardens, first-class steelworks, and autobahns. It has exemplary order. We should fight for it. Secret archives reveal how Russia showed huge support for Christian crusader Nazi invaders who had come to fight godless communists. The Daily Mail on the web has this piece of information. Soviet supported Christian crusader, Nazi World War II. Incidentally, this type of level of Nazi socialist foreign collaboration ought to surprised no one. The Germans, including Hitler, made a clear distinction between the Soviet idea and the Slavic race, which even Hitler asserted had creative potential. The Slavs were not considered Untermenschen. The Bolsheviks who ruled them were. So, it's interesting because my mom, who born and raised in England, so is still a British citizen, she brings a lot of British culture, and the Brits had already been owned and operated by this synagogue of Satan way before World War II, and some of the values, like looking down on Eastern Europeans, is a brainwashing technique, because actually the Eastern Europeans are actually, even today, now are making the biggest advances for freedom against the globalists, so it's really interesting. Yeah. You see certain things, and back then, people were kind of, it comes in the culture. It comes like, you're supposed to look down on these people. Even in America, when I grew up, you're supposed to look down on Europeans. It's kind of like, oh man, they're schmaltzy and and blah blah blah. There's all these like derogatory, views of Europeans that we were supposed to grow up with. That they're just not with it like the Americans and so forth. I never understood that, and now I do. It's brainwashing. It's Bolshevik brainwashing that that they're trying to get you to dislike. And that's another thing. And that's one of the things I don't like, that I didn't like about Henry Ford, was because most of what he did, his expose on international Jews and so forth, I support that 100%. But he was into the melting pot thing, and I find that kind of offensive. Another thing that I noticed growing up in America was this idea that once you're in America, you drop your Italianness or your Irishness or your German heritage and so forth. I think that was a mistake. I don't think it would have been better if these different European groups had actually had their own colonies and so forth, and that America was more of a mirror reflection of Europe, where you had just actually, New Germany, New Italy, New France, and so forth. I think that would be a better world, actually. That's my feeling about it. All right. Let's see, where am I reading here? Okay, let's keep going. This is let's see, 35. Okay, right. 38. I'm going to read page 38. How am I doing time-wise? All right, we're almost done for this half. We're just getting started. I'll try to fit the next one in a whole hour. I'll try to see if I can squeeze the rest of it. I got a lot, but it gives you an idea of why you want to watch the next video. And so I'll sign off for now, and I'll post this one and start part 2. Let me see where